It is 1:16 p.m. This is the monthly meeting for the Inmate Disciplinary Oversight Board. We're at the Tennessee Tower. We have 7 members present in the room and 2 virtual. If we would, we'll start, Mr. Frank and do the roll call.
Lee Frank. Bruce Carr. Mike Dunn.
Jerry Bassfinder.
Mary Carpos.
Mike Sharon.
Vanessa Murtaugh.
Montel Betsy.
Betsy Wiseman.
Quantel Linder.
Okay, we've got a quorum, and I think Mr. Mike Dunn, would you lead us with opening prayer?
Be honored. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the blessings of life. We thank you for the free pardon of sin. We thank you for the time you've given us together. We ask your blessings on our fellowship, on our meeting today. We ask those blessings also on those joining us virtually. And would you open doors for us that only you can open, and would you close the doors that we don't need to spend any time wasting? So we thank you in advance for what you have in store for us. We ask for your guidance, your protectance, and your wisdom as we go forward towards the goal. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, has everybody got a chance to review minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
A motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any question?
I would just like to recognize the fact that the transcription that's being made is not always catching all words. So I rely on the video for the complete minutes.
I've noticed that they pick up our southern accents wrong. Okay, motion, we've got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looks like we turn it over to Director Stahl.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for being here. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a quick overview of the last 30 days for the benefit of the board members and the public. The big thing we just finished today was a site visit at Riverbend. And I'll just say publicly how much we appreciate Warden Nelson and his team's openness and hospitality today. We were able to talk with the disciplinary board sergeant over there at Riverbend, a few of the officers, and we saw the plea process. And so that was a really worthwhile visit. And so thank you again to them for that. We also had the opportunity in the last 30 days to meet with TDOC General Counsel, Jim Brenner. We also received a memorandum answering some questions that the board had from the Attorney General's office. We've met several times at our voluntary meeting on Tuesday. We met with fiscal and Department of Finance about our budget. We've met with them several times since on some salary adjustments. They're working very closely with us to try and get us the needed staffing and budgetary supplemental stuff that's going to allow us to do that. The job posting for an executive assistant has been posted as of yesterday. Waiting to get applications in for that. Hope to have somebody on board here to help out with staffing sometime in the next 2 to 4 weeks. We presented to TDOC leadership at the statewide wardens meeting as well. We distributed over 1,628 cases for initial review to all the board members. I've already gotten some of those back, so I appreciate that very much. We have made over 30 requests for additional information on cases to TDOC leadership in the last month, and we have made several requests alerting TDOC leadership to inmates with EXP dates that are upcoming that we think their TOMAS information doesn't match the amount of time that's been taken away. So we're really doing our best to try and let TDOC know that we are reviewing all those things closely to make sure that inmates are not being released any earlier than absolutely necessary. So to everybody's work and help on all those things, I very much appreciate that. And last but certainly not least, in the last 30 days, we have become a full board. I would like to introduce Mr. Bruce Dale Carr, a former representative of the 12th District of the Tennessee House of Representatives. He was also an alderman in Sevierville. He served as an alderman from 2008 to 2012. While he was represented in the House, he sat on a number of committees, Property and Planning Subcommittee, he was the chair, Transportation Committee, Safety and Funding Subcommittee, Naming, Designating, and Private Acts Committee, and other local committees. He's married to Joanne and currently resides in Sevierville, and we could not be happier to have him on board. I'd like to give him a chance for just a minute or so to maybe say some words and introduce himself to board members and public.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm honored to be here. I was really surprised when the speaker wanted me to come on this board. And I know a lot of you have a lot more experience on some of these things than I do, but I think my expertise would be on the legislative side if we need anything, and I'll be glad to help with that. But other than that, I appreciate it, and I'll just anything I can do for anybody that's on this board, just let me know, and I'll be glad to help. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so that closes out that agenda item. We'll move on to updates on outstanding matters. The first outstanding matter I wanted to update everybody on is the annual report. We were able to have a meeting with several members of the board a few weeks ago about the annual report. Still working through that process. I know we have a soft deadline of December 1st to hopefully have a draft out to all the board members. I'm hopeful that we can meet that deadline. And the rest of this week and next week will be, my effort will be primarily toward finishing up that annual report. We're still waiting to hear back from TDOC on a number of our requests that I mentioned in the last agenda item that we have submitted for the October cases. We are still trying to finish out the supplemental salary Excel sheet that needs to be submitted to the Department of Finance to get approval for 3 more staffing positions, general counsel, full-time general counsel, part-time IT project manager, and deputy executive director. So still working on those. But we did receive the Attorney General opinion, which was an outstanding matter for quite a while. And now really what we need to do is just take a look at that and discuss next steps. So hopefully we can get together. I don't think we'll probably have a in-depth discussion today about that memorandum. I think that's something that we'll need to do on our own. So we'll have to plan for that. We'll plan for the next site visit. Let me ask this. Are there any particular requests for our next site visit at a particular location or specific facility? Or do we want to engage with TDOC and just see what's available to us? And also, do we want to do one in December? I'll open that up for discussion. So the first question is, do we want to do one in December? And the second question is, does anyone have a preference for facility?
In my opinion, we should not do a site visit in December because most of the facilities will be wrapped up in holiday parties, gatherings, visitations for family members, for the inmates. It would probably disrupt their cramming of the end of the year and their holiday routine based on what I've seen. So
what does everyone think about doing our next site visit in January?
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
Okay, that's what I'll plan for.
December really needs to be set aside for end of the year reporting.
Right.
Okay. Does anyone have a preference for January?
So we're gonna have to travel, so unless we go to Deborah K.
I think we should see what TDOC can make available for us, and then we can select from that list.
Okay.
If they get the schedule out.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll work on that then. Finally, the last update is FileNet is moving into production platform. So if we have any changes to FileNet that we really, really want, that can still happen, but it's a more difficult process than when it was in its testing phase. So let me know. Please continue to provide feedback on FileNet, but that's what we're going to be looking at for the next little bit. So. And that's it. Do I have any questions on outstanding matters? Yes, sir, Mr.
I
Frank.
was gonna ask our board on that AG's opinion, which is interesting, to say the least. Do we want to, I know we were wanting to talk about it, not here, but either Friday or Monday, or do we want to kick it off until after Thanksgiving? I was just gonna ask y'all.
Friday or Tuesday, I can do Monday too. I mean, we've got Tuesday already, 10 o'clock set up for stuff.
That's not a bad idea.
I can do Friday too. Friday or Tuesday.
Or Tuesday's fine. I mean, I don't fly out till Wednesday, which I think is good.
Because it's still a holiday week.
Next Tuesday. Yeah, it's coming Tuesday. Yeah.
I can
Well,
do
just give
Monday.
it be a Zoom call. Oh, Zoom call. Oh, okay. Okay. Tuesday's good with me.
Well, we have one board member that can't make Tuesday.
But Monday or Friday, no problem.
Monday's fine. Friday,
I can do Friday.
I'm good anytime. Time to, I mean, just,
What about Quantel and Lindsay? Quantel.
Betsy, Quantel,
I can do Friday.
Friday or Monday.
I'm okay
Yeah.
with whatever's best for the group.
At 10 a.m. and a 1:30 on Friday. So we can squeeze something in afternoon Friday or late morning Friday, or we could just do Monday. You want to say you could do, you want to put a tentative meeting on the agenda or on the calendar?
Is tomorrow Tuesday?
No, tomorrow.
Is the state off on Friday? Because usually they bypass Columbus Day to be on Thanksgiving.
I think I sent out the schedule,
That's the 20.
but I didn't. Is it the day after?
Yeah. 28th is Thanksgiving, Thursday.
So 29th is.
Yeah, 29th is holiday.
Yeah.
you're okay
22nd or
anytime.
23rd.
Friday's.
I know some of us,
Friday's
Friday's a holiday.
busy.
Okay, do you want to do Monday?
Well, I was gonna say the 20, it looks like your schedule and we have the 21st or the 25th.
I have a 10:15 to 11 on Thursday, but other than that, I'm free. And then on Monday, let's see,
you're talking about tomorrow.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
And
that's
Monday I'm free.
let's do 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Is that good for everyone?
That sounds
That's
good.
okay with everyone.
Okay, I will send out,
Thank you,
Maybe 1
Quintel.
o'clock Central Time.
yes, sir.
Okay. Get on.
And that will be for a memo discussion?
That'll be the memo discussion, yes.
Your team, yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I will send out the invite for teams after this meeting. That works, everybody?
Yes, thank you.
Thursday.
Okay. Anything else for outstanding matters? Okay, great. Okay, moving on, we have the submissions for this month for initially reviewed cases that can move into the record for approval. I calculated 571 cases for this month that have been initially reviewed and approved as procedurally correct and ready to move into the record, and which brings our total for the year of initially reviewed hearings to 5,266 as approved. Any questions about that?
I make a motion that we put this into approve 571. Right.
Seconded. Okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
All right.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. So we can move those into the record. Appreciate everybody's hard work for getting those into me, representing September's hearing. hearings. So thank you again. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. We had a board member bring up institutional issues. I have some talking points down here about Hardeman, maybe some additional facilities, but I think this issue was first brought up by Ms. Murtaugh. So I will hand it over to her and we can discuss her ideas and open up to the group about institutional issues that we see.
Right, so we have been able to kind of navigate our way for individual cases and how we report them up the chain. But we have yet to kind of really navigate or solidify a policy or a procedure for an entire institution. And now that we're coming up on the end of the year, I think that we should all be able to give 12 months or close to worth of data on trends and things like that. And if it's an entire institution that seems to have problems every single month, whether it's with particular charges or just in general, right? Then how would we flag an entire institution? Now, I would like to approach this in a way that we have previously and successfully approached policy and procedure. And I would make a motion to form a subcommittee to address this issue.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that the chair essentially create a subcommittee to address institutional issues. Does anyone want to second?
I'll second.
Okay. Okay. It sounds fairly simple, just having the chair approve a subcommittee of however many members and having them do some work into this particular issue. Are there any discussions?
Yeah, so discussion. I'm prepared, given where we left off at the last meeting, a PowerPoint, because I do think it's very important to look at the data and consider what the data tells us about what may or may not be going on at particular facilities. And I'd like to enter that into the discussion.
Okay, do you want to do that now as part of the discussion for this motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's appropriate.
Okay, I am going to share my screen. Betsy and Quantel, if you cannot see my screen, please let me know.
Yes, I can see it. I can see it. Thanks.
Great.
And
This,
if you'll play the presentation from slide. My name is Dr. Mary.
is that okay?
And I am presenting an inmate disciplinary oversight board random sample analysis. Random sample of disciplinaries. A randomly selected sample of Class A incidents occurring between January 1, 2024, July 31, 2024, within the 14 prisons that operate under the authority of the Tennessee Department of Correction, was drawn by the Inmate Disciplinary Oversight Board Executive Director and assigned to Dr. Mary Karpos for review. The sample Dr. Karpos received was comprised of 2,118 individual instances of a specific offender documented in TOMIS, the Tennessee Offender Management Information System, as receiving a write-up for a Class A incident violation and scheduled for a disciplinary board hearing. The methodology used for the analysis is as follows. A random sample of specific offenders who received a Class A violation and were scheduled for a disciplinary board hearing was reviewed. The offense code for each Class A violation was identified for each disciplinary. The disciplinary board hearing decision was identified for each disciplinary. Whether sentence credits were lost was identified for each disciplinary. Questions to be answered by the analysis. Do disciplinary board hearings result in a loss of sentence credits? What percentage of disciplinary offenses do not result in a loss of sentence credits? What percentage of disciplinary board hearings at each of the 14 prisons do not result in a loss of sentence credits? Do disciplinary board hearings result in a loss of sentence credits? Only 30% of the time. Out of 2,118 disciplinaries, only 646 resulted in a loss of sentence credits. What percentage of disciplinary offenses do not result in a loss of sentence credits? There are many Class A disciplinaries that do not result in a loss of sentence credits. Even when we consider some of the most serious disciplinary offenses, such as assault on staff with weapon, 33% of the time, there was no loss of sentence credits. Assault on staff without weapon, 37% of the time, there was no loss of sentence credits. Assault on offenders with weapons, 47% of the time, there was no loss of credits. Assault on offenders without weapons, 61% of the time, there was no loss of credit. Possession of a weapon, 70% of the time, there was no loss of credit. Possession or use of a cell phone, 77% of the time, there was no loss of credits. What percentage of disciplinary board hearings at each of the 14 prisons do not result in a loss of sentence credits? Disciplinary board hearings at most of the 14 prisons result in little or no loss of sentence credit. Conclusion. The Tennessee Department of Corrections awarded 689,435 behavior credits and 668,129 program credits to offenders within the 14 prisons between January 1, 2024 and August 2nd, 2024. The analysis demonstrates TDOC's reluctance to withdraw sentence credits once they have been awarded, despite assaults, the presence of drugs, weapons, cell phones, positive drug tests, and refusing to participate, as evidenced by the failure to consistently withdraw sentence credits as a consequence for these types of violations. So this really kind of sets a benchmark. It looks at what happened in the first 7 months of looking at these disciplinary cases. As we heard today, apparently there's a new matrix, there's been new training. And so over the next 4 to 6 months, we have an opportunity to compare what happens next with what we know happened in the first half of this calendar year. So I think it's important to think about, in particular, one of the slides up there demonstrated that there's very little variation in terms of the utilization of withdrawing sentence credits across the 14 prisons. We've talked casually sometimes about particular prisons maybe doing certain things with disciplinaries versus other prisons. But when we look at the data, there's a very similar pattern, and it has to do with very little loss of credits. Even at some of the facilities that we may think procedurally are handling their cases very well. While they're procedurally handling them well and utilizing some of the restrictions that are available to them within the prison, our authority is structured around whether or not sentence credits are being withdrawn. And the picture that the data shows is that it's not been necessarily something that's been at the forefront, that more pedestrian, for lack of another word, more pedestrian tools are being used to manage the inmate population, such as restrictions of privileges, whether it's postal privileges, commissary privileges, visitation privileges. And while those may be useful for management and gaining compliance within the facility, my concern is always about public safety. And if Class A incidents are an indicator that someone is less capable of managing themselves in a cooperative way, then it certainly to me would seem to be a signal that not only should there restrictions inside the prison be levied against them, but to maintain public safety, there needs to be an acceleration on how sentence credits are being withdrawn to ensure that those folks are not coming closer and closer to going out the door when their behavior indicates that they're having a very difficult time working within compliance.
Do you want me to share that PowerPoint with everybody?
Please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you.
I will do that. I will get that to everybody.
I was gonna say, I was just sitting here looking at my October with Bledsoe. It would be good to know, let's pick a month, the percentage, like Bledsoe, there are 22 different incidents. One dismissal was the other inmate took the rap on a WHK, what I wrote down. And then there's an RTP where both are dismissed. So that's 3, but the one was, the other guy took the charge. But of those 19 that Bledsoe took time in every single case. Bledsoe takes time. If you make it to the end of the D board and it's not dismissed or cause or reduced to a B, you're going to lose time pretty much every time at Bledsoe.
And so looking in the more than 2,000 case sample, 44% of the time, Bledsoe took time.
Did they? Okay.
44% of the time.
Can I ask about that also? That percentage, I think I heard today that they were saying that if you get a disciplinary for that month, the credits you get for that month are going to be taken away.
Well, that's true of anybody who gets a Class A write-up.
Right.
It's not a month that you can earn the credits.
Yeah, so that analysis doesn't take that into account because they're going to lose that month's time regardless.
Well,
That 44% is about whether they took more time than that. Is that right?
yeah, but let me say this about that as it regards public safety. The notion that someone is not going to accrue credits in a month that they've received a write-up is different than the conversation of what's meaningful in the larger context of ensuring that someone who's demonstrating that they're uncooperative in a particularly restrictive environment, what would be the notion that they would be cooperative in free society? And so simply saying, well, we didn't give them credit the month that they got a write-up, to me, that's a relatively weak response.
Sure, and I'm not saying that that's it. I just want to make sure that
Correct.
I understood
This is
that.
about, did the hearing
Yes.
board assign loss of credit? Even in things as serious as assaults on staff. Not that I'm saying that it's, or minimizing assaults on offenders. I think assaults of any kind within the context of a facility are serious, whether it's a staff member or not a staff member. And the notion that only 33% of the time I could get away with that without having any credit lost by assaulting a staff member with a weapon. Now, I know weapon is a range of things, but just the notion that, hey, let me play the odds. 1 out of 3, I'm not even gonna get sentence credits taken from me.
Sure. No, I get, I
That's
just wanted to
just
make sure that,
difficult.
that I
Yes,
understood.
right.
Does
I
your data
based it
include
so-
anybody else's work in there? Any of the other?
No, I don't have access to other people, but remember, this is a random sample. And all cases are put in a pot. And so theoretically, your pot doesn't look any different than anybody else's pot.
Theoretically.
I think we learned a lot this today when basically it's like a district attorney that they plea bargain. They're plea bargaining from losing time to not losing time so that it doesn't go through a D board and they're just signing plead guilty. I think that I didn't know
You
that
have
was
to take
going
that,
on like
that is a factor that you have to take into consideration now. That's a new piece.
Yeah, I just didn't know it was going on like that.
Well, and from what we heard, 7 out of 10.
So,
Right.
7 out of 10.
Yeah.
So really, when you're looking in Thomas, or as we've been looking at Thomas, we've been assuming that we're looking at hearings.
Right.
And what we learned, at least at this facility, is that about 70%, by some estimates, of what we're seeing, hearing didn't even happen. And so maybe we even have to rethink, how do we touch that part?
Right.
Do you think that's
Differentiate
something?
between a guilty plea and a not guilty plea as far as being a plea board, right? Remember you said, I wonder if it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that
do
that
we-
was a new piece of the puzzle, and we don't know if that holds true at the other
Sure.
13 facilities. We don't know, but I found that very intriguing information.
So is it worthwhile to set up a subcommittee that discusses what Vanessa was saying, or a subcommittee, or maybe another subcommittee that now addresses what we learned today? Or want to roll it into one, or how do we want to progress with the motion? Or subcommittee?
My thought about the subcommittee is, and I'm all in favor of subcommittees in the general sense. I think we're still trying to figure out what we're wrestling with here. And if I understood the purpose of the subcommittee, it was to explore what we might do if we notice something about a particular facility.
Is that right, Vanessa?
Yes.
So going back to the next to the last, or the last graphic, most of these facilities have more in common than not. So I know Hardman's name was mentioned at the last one, but Turney Center has identical percentages. So I think we have to be very careful if we want to say, well, I want to single out a particular facility when there's really something systemic here. And that's why, percentage-wise, the majority of them look so similar. Riverbend was 91%. Hardeman and Turney were both 94%. It's not a big difference between Riverbend, Hardeman, and Turney.
91% dismissed, or?
No, in terms of not taking any credits.
Okay.
So 94% of Hardman, 94% of Turney, 91% of Riverbend took no credits. Oh, what? So I just want to be cautious before we see a subcommittee making sure that we have the facts about any or all of the facilities, rather than saying, well, you know, how would we address this one facility? Well, to me, you've got a systemic problem. It's not a facility or even a few facilities. It's the majority of them don't take any time.
Ms. Murtaugh?
Well, I don't think that the subcommittee needs to focus on just, procedure for one facility. I mean, maybe we look at all of it, and that's why I said we look at all the data. We should be able to look at almost a full year's worth of information from every single board member and notice any kind of trends. And that could be, where it's the converse, right? Like 13 of the 14 are in this negative space of percentages, right? Like this, right, this. And this one is not on that list, right? Because they're doing things well. Nothing's to say that when we develop these procedures that it's isolated to one facility or one type of crime or one type of whatever, 1 month. I mean, it's just, if we're going to submit a report or we're going to say like, hey, listen, this is a systemic problem among 7 of our facilities,
or all 14, I just would like to have that procedure in place, because if we're noticing these trends and you're able to collect this data and you've already just in this short time been able to present this information, that makes me even want to do this subcommittee and develop this stuff even more, because we're sitting on information and not doing anything about it. And that does not sit well with me. And that's why I asked for this to be on the agenda, because I think we are ready to at least put the procedure in place. What information we're looking at, or how we'll report, like what facilities, what we're going to deem to be important in that area. I don't think we're still working on that and figuring out where this data comes from. And as we compile more board members' data, we're going to have a better picture, a clearer picture. But we can still put the steps in place, I think. And so that way, as soon as we're ready, I feel like we're quite close, we can just do it. Because the longer we sit here and don't do it, if it's a systemic problem, I don't feel like I'm doing my job if I'm not saying something.
Do what is it that you're proposing we do?
Well,
What would the subcommittee do?
that's the question, right? If we want to report, if we're sitting on some data and it's not an individual case, we know what we do when it's an individual case. But if we're sitting on some data and it's multiple facilities, it's a systemic problem, it's one facility in particular, it's, whatever facility on this type of charge, they're always dismissing them, right? Like they never do anything with it. Well, where do we send it? Where does it go? Does it go to Stall? Do we have a form? Like, how do we do this? And then where does Stall send it? Right? That's what I'm talking about. We know what to do if it's an individual case, but we don't have a procedure if it's bigger than that. And according to your data, it is bigger than that.
So I thought either the last meeting or the one before September, we passed a policy that indicated that our distribution list had to do with the General Assembly, the agency, and other stakeholders. So wouldn't that be what we do with the information, is that we pass it in accordance with that policy that we already adopted?
I see your point, but do we wait? Does Lee wait if he has an individual case? Does he wait for it to go on a report to be put on that distribution list? Or does he immediately email Executive Director Stahl and say, hey, I need you to tell TDOC because this guy's about to get out of jail?
I say again, isn't that embodied in
Well,
that policy?
It's embodied. I think we clarified who any information that we exchange will go to. And the information that we agreed to exchange was the annual report and then the monthly report. So if there's more than that, though, we can include those people, or we can do it on an individual basis, because we have that for the monthly reports and that will guide our annual report. But if somebody sends me an individual case for more information, or an individual inmate with an upcoming DXP date, I don't send that out to all those stakeholders. I just send that to
On the
TDOC.
individual.
Yes.
Right.
So,
It just
if
seems.
someone were to come to me and they would say, I want to know, I want whoever, the stakeholders or whoever, to be aware that I have a big problem with a particular facility. I guess I could do that. I would, at this point with that policy, I would probably ask that individual board member, do you want me to make these statements to just TDOC leadership? Do you want me to make it to all of the people in our stakeholder policy? I'm not really sure, where that fits into what you're looking for. If someone were to come to me, because that hasn't happened. No one's come to me and said, I want the warden of a particular institution to know that I'm noticing something institutionally, and, or I want stakeholders to know that I'm noticing this institutionally. Right now, the closest we could get to that would be if someone wanted me to put that in the monthly report. Someone emailed me and said, I want you to put this statement about this facility in the monthly report. I can do that. And then that for sure would go to the stakeholders. But short of that, I don't know. I would rely on the individual board member to tell me who they would like this information to be passed to.
So I actually was under the impression that those kinds of requests would be in the monthly report and that they would be shared with leadership at the General Assembly. That we wouldn't be conveying individually to wardens.
Well, I was just using that as an
Yeah.
example. So yes, the plan at this point, but I'm using my discretion to, obviously, everything we talk about doesn't go in the monthly report. So if that were to become an issue, yes, I would probably put it in the monthly report and send it out. But hypothetically, if a board member had an issue, and let's say it was the beginning of the month, and the monthly report wasn't going to come out for another 3 weeks, and they said, I don't want to wait for the monthly report to, whatever, call out this person or whatever, I would just look at them and say, well, what else do you want me to do?
So,
But that hasn't happened yet.
yes, exactly. And on that note, would that be appropriate for individual members to ask to call out a particular facility, or would that be up to the board to determine that?
Well, that would be part of developing the policy and procedure. I think it would be the board, but that would be a question that could be answered in that subcommittee.
I'm wondering if we can come to some kind of an agreement. I think we're closer together than it may be apparent. I think we actually have very similar ideas about this. I guess my reservation is putting together another subcommittee. When we have an annual report, we have an expectation of producing our guidelines and our policies so that they can be examined. And we're under a timeline to do that. And so I'm just looking for ways where existing policies could potentially be amended through this meeting so that we can move past that and allow our executive director to craft an annual report and a set of guidelines and policies by his deadline, December 1st, for us to review. That's when the draft is due to us. So I'm concerned if we set up a subcommittee, it'll be next board meeting before we can vote on anything. And how does that impact finalizing the annual report, which needs to be finalized, my understanding is, by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to move the process along. I'm not oppositional to what Vanessa's suggesting. I'm just trying to identify ways that we might be able to come to some agreements here rather than farming it out to a subcommittee. And then allow our executive director to craft that policy for us. Does that make any sense? If it doesn't make sense, it's okay.
What information would you need from each of us to put together everybody from January to August and then from September to now? Because I think we're going to I think if we look at the data from January to August, which we all know is very low, I think we're going to see that from September going to the end of the year, I think is going to go up because after the Wharton's meeting, that's when they put together all these D-board. Obviously the board has a little bit of influence because that's all they were saying. We've heard about y'all. So, I'd like, what would it take from each one of us to be able to compare the first part of the year to the last part of the year?
Mm-hmm. So what would be needed would be a list of the offense codes, the Thomas ID, whether or not sentence credits were taken. Yes or no?
Just our regular spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly. For everybody.
Thin down,
who's
you don't need the
complete.
whole spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Just
I
those
don't
three
need the whole,
things.
and I don't even need to know who it is. Just.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say that too. Have
Because
they,
that
have they
starts in
fixed their,
July. So let's do August, September, October, whoever's all the way through, August, September,
maybe
October.
those 3 months, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I
And
think they picked
and I'll
up the
bring that
game,
back
some
next
of them
meeting.
have.
we'll see.
I think so. Maybe not, I mean, I'm sitting there looking,
I'm more than happy to crunch those numbers and let's
It's-
take a look.
you know, when they said that today, I was gonna bring this up. Do you think they're taking these plea bargains because they don't have staff? Or that that's their political or their philosophy to not take time? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you think they do those plea bargains because they just don't have time to get to them all. And so they want to get them off their plate.
Well, and we just don't
Because
even,
Bledsoe doesn't let them do this.
yeah,
They
we
take
don't
their
know if other
time.
facilities are doing this at all.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Vanessa.
Oh, so my motion is still on the floor. And I need to leave so I can get home. So if I think we can absolutely, there are some of us that could meet offline or in separate groups on a subcommittee and talk about these things that you're bringing up and she's bringing up and stuff, everybody's kind of throwing around. While also Stahl works on the annual report. I think we are absolutely capable of doing that. I, of course, will yield to the majority. My feelings will not be hurt if we don't form one now, but my motion is still on the floor.
Okay, so just to recap, we have a motion by Ms. Horicott to set up a subcommittee to create a policy that would guide the board members when they have institutional issues that they want to bring to the board or the public. That's been seconded. We've had, I think, a healthy discussion about the pros and cons of that. If there's no more discussion, we'll move it to a vote. Is there any more discussion? Ms. Wiseman, Mr. Lindsay, any more discussion on that, or can we move to a vote? Okay, not hearing any more discussion, we will move to a vote. So the motion, again, is to set up a subcommittee to address institutional issues, and that committee will be put together by the chair at a later date. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay.
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 Okay, the ayes have it. So we will set up a subcommittee to address institutional issues. Board member, and we will set that up at a later date with the chair, unless we want to do that now. Does anyone want to? Yes, Ms. Wiseman, you have your hand up.
Oh, her microphone isn't working. She was voting aye.
Oh, aye. Okay, thank you for that.
One thing we need to be cautious on, and I'm talking to the attorney here, and that's fine. I've served on subcommittees for 12 years. The amount of knowledge, or not knowledge, excuse me, the amount of information that we try to get from that subcommittee, the limited time, you're going to have to narrow it down so we can get the report in. Because once you get the report in, and it goes to the legislature, and then I'm sure that this board will be called before GovOps. And that's when you're really going to take a hit. Okay, so that's all I'm saying.
No, it's not answer. We appreciate that.
No. That's one of the reasons I'm very glad you're here, is that particular guidance. Yes, absolutely.
You're going to take a
1,000%. Always
hit in
welcome.
GovOps.
Always
Third
welcome.
Week of January, they've already told us.
Okay, I didn't know when they done it. I was on GovOps, but I didn't know.
What do you mean by that?
They will look at this board,
Okay.
being the first time that it's been before GovOps.
Okay.
They will look at anything and everything, and they will dig deep.
Okay.
And so we got to be unified. We got to make sure that our director is unified with what we are. We all stand behind the report. And like I said, this report that's made, it needs to be precise and not spread way out and get down to the nitty gritty at least next 2 months so that you can have your report done and present it to that board. And I mean, I'm not saying anything about this board. All I'm saying is the first time board, whoever it is, will rake it through the code.
Sure.
Thanks.
That's good.
Thanks for recommending that. I should do the code.
I did not know.
Okay, well, we can continue to look to the subcommittee now, but we do have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow if we want to address that. I'll leave that to the chair.
We'll just address that in the board's meeting, see if he's on that.
Okay, so everybody just think about if you'd like to be part of that subcommittee, and then we can figure out the membership for that subcommittee tomorrow when we meet. Okay, great. Moving on to, unless there's anything else on that agenda item. Anyone else have anything on the agenda? I sent out Dr. Parkos in PowerPoint. I'm sure she'd be happy to field questions about it.
That was true. I think the TDOC, the stuff on, yes, hopefully they're getting better, but that graph, on some of it, they don't take time at all with that RTPs way there at the end, 100%, no time, or I can't remember, INT. But I wonder if the commissioner and Linda Thomas, I mean, that's some really damning. To me, it was. I didn't realize it was that much. It's really good.
Well, and to me, I never want data to seem as if it's damning. It's informative.
It's
Sometimes we have feelings about how things are going. And the data sometimes confirms your feelings are accurate. But sometimes the data gives us an opportunity to stop and think about, while we thought it was this way, when we really look at the nuts and bolts of it, it's actually not that way. So that's an opportunity to take stock and think about, where do I want this to go? Where do we want this to go? And how are we going to get there? So that's really, I never want to use it in any way of, oh, I got you or something. It's not that. It's about having the information, because then we have an assessment apart from our own feelings about how things are
I
going.
guess instead of damning, eye-opening, it's the term I would use.
Not what I expected, right?
Let me clarify one thing. The only reason I voted no is because of time.
Correct.
That's the only reason I voted no. I mean, subcommittee, we can pull this stuff out. We're under crunch right now. So we want our first, I'll talk to the boys that we want our first presentation to that board and the report that you turn in to be just as smooth as it.
I agree.
Yeah, and then we'll,
That's gonna be the focus.
yeah, and we'll take our time and we'll make sure it's done right. And if that means it doesn't get finished before the end of the year because we don't want something that's halfway done in there, then that's what we'll do. No, and I am so glad you're here.
I agree. I hope you guys find an executive director that does a good job for you.
No, I mean, I don't even mean to make it sound like gloom and doom. It's
No, I know.
I guess it's,
Because on the side, I'm sorry, I was going to say on the side note, I was impressed today when the lady, and I don't know if I got a little swagger in me, when she said, oh, we all know about you. We're talking about you. And I was like, well, that's kind of what we're here
It's not a
for.
bad thing. It's not.
That's why we're here, is that somebody is making sure things are being done correctly. I think that's why the legislature put the board in, is that they needed auditing and somebody to watch over the situation. So anyway, I thought it was very, I don't know how you put that into our report, but I think that's.
Well, no, we're gonna build something that represents a lot of that.
and if you went back and watched, of course, I was there, and the reason I had a little insight on this, Representative Farmer was on this committee that formed this board. Okay. Well, you had a lot of opposition when it came up to the committees, but yet that opposition from Department of Corrections, but it's needed. It's needed. We need to take some of these credits away. People get out.
Amen and amen. And on that note,
Yeah.
We're not done yet. Ms. Murtaugh, we have allotted till 3:00 for this meeting. I understand that you have a long drive back, and if you need to go, you can go, but I just want to say, also, Mr. Bassbinder, our chair, mentioned that Dr. Karpos will take some of that data if you all have it. If you need help consolidating that.
well, it's in FileNet.
So, but it's in FileNet in a form that she would have to go through and pick everything
Oh,
out.
I don't want to clean the data.
Yeah, so,
That takes a long time.
No, yeah, no, I
so
feel you.
you said the TOMAS number, the incident code, and whether time was taken, yes or no,
Incident code, whether time was taken, and the facility.
and the
You
facility.
have to know the facility.
So if anyone wants to go back through and do that for her, I'm pretty sure she said that she would take her time to put all that together for us, which would make that presentation we saw a little more robust and a little more comprehensive.
Well, I wouldn't add it to it. This is benchmark. So this would be your next interval.
Sure.
So this is the next.
It could be,
interval.
I could be separate, but I mean, again, more information is just better.
Right, I just have a question for clarification. The data that you need, if, not a dismissal, so if
No, it's.
a
all
guilty,
cases.
if it,
All cases. All cases, all cases.
so even if it was dismissed or reduced to a
That's a
B,
decision.
what if it's the one where it's the co-defendant and,
That's a decision.
okay,
It's a
it's
decision.
very meta. It's
It's very meta, but it's a start.
But it's good to know that. It's good to know that that's part of the methodology. So, it's, and then we could talk about that, whether we think that methodology makes sense or whatever. But if anyone wants to put that together for her.
Well,
And
just
I,
as a backstory, 40% are dismissed. And that's a whole nother research question.
Yeah, that's,
What's
I love,
going on with
I'm more
these
interested in that
dismissals?
side.
That's a whole different question, but, Vanessa at the last meeting, rightfully so, said we need to be talking about whether or not sentence credits are being taken. And so that's what I really used as a position to say, are sentence credits being taken?
Right.
Yes or no? And where and when?
And then we'll start to break it down
You
in
know,
smaller
and that.
bits. Yeah.
But this whole notion of hearing boards dismissing 40% of what's out there, well, that's a whole nother appeal. Apart from that, but yes, I need all cases.
and to Ms. Murtaugh's point, a lot of that information is on file. So if anyone wants to see, I try to keep that spreadsheet as updated as possible. So you can go through, do your own, and I'll take a look at what other people are seeing. You can sort through, and if anyone's got any questions about Excel, let me know, and I can show you how to sort through. You can see the dismissals, you can count them all. So a lot of that stuff is available for everybody's benefit, and I'm happy to do that. But
I will have to say, it does have to be the complete month. So you can't just send heart because it is a randomized sample. So if you've completed the complete month of August, send it, or September or October, but you have to complete
Not January to July.
Not a portion. It's a random sample, so I need the entire sample.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay, well, great. I guess we'll close out that agenda item if there's no more discussion on that. We appreciate that, Dr. Harpus. Our last item is public comment. I don't see any members of the public online. We don't have anyone present, so we'll move past that. Our last agenda item is closing notes. We have the meeting tomorrow at, what did we say, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. I will send out the Teams link for that. If you don't get it, please let me know. I think Representative Carr, you may stay for a few minutes if you have time, and maybe work with our chair on getting you up to speed a little bit. And is there anything else that people are having issues with that they want to talk about or they want me to know about? If you don't want to say it here, please reach out. And then we're just on to the final agenda item, which is adjournment. So I'll pass that back over to Jim.
Okay, if we want further business. Motion to adjourn.
So
Second. All in favor?
Uh,